Today at 1, ambulance waiting times in England rise sharply amid warnings the NHS is being driven to breaking point. More than 11,000 ambulances waited for over an hour outside A&E last week, leaving patients stranded.
She deteriorated mentally really quickly, and that is a direct result of how poorly she was because of how long she'd been left.
Why are waiting times just getting longer and longer? We'll take a look. Also this lunchtime, a black British charity boss who was repeatedly asked where she was really from at a royal reception has told the BBC she felt abused.
Right, no matter how uncomfortable it is for other people to accept, I'm very clear that I experienced racism in an environment that I should have felt safe in.
A warning to dispose of household batteries more safely after hundreds of fires in bin lorries and waste facilities every year.
Hello, I'm Rob.
And a CBeebies first, former rugby league player Rob Burrow reads the bedtime story using a voice computer.
And coming up on the BBC News Channel, a record-breaking opening day for England's cricketers. 4 players passed their centuries on their return to Pakistan after 17 years.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. Senior figures in the NHS are warning that pressures on England's ambulance service are reaching breaking point. New figures show waiting times outside hospitals worsened last month, with more than 11,000 ambulance crews a week, or 1 in 7, stuck in queues of at least an hour outside A&E. The government insists more funding has been made available to free up beds, allowing ambulances to drop off patients more quickly. Our health correspondent Jim Reid has a story.
Just a few months ago, Mary Lynn was up, about and mobile. Then she had a fall at her home in Southampton. It took an ambulance more than 7 hours to reach her, when it should have taken 3 at most.
The doctors had said not to move her off the floor in case she'd damaged any bones or anything like that. And when they did eventually arrive, she was really poorly, and I thought I was going to lose her.
When she got to hospital, Mary Lynn had to wait in the ambulance before she could be moved into A&E. She's now recovering, but that day has taken its toll.
She deteriorated mentally, and that is a direct result of how poorly she was because of how long she'd been left.
You can see now 23 ambulances with patients.
This has been the problem across much of the country. Hospital backlogs mean often there's not enough room for ambulances to unload sick patients. When they get to A&E, paramedics should be able to deliver patients in under 15 minutes. But more than 11,000 crews a week in England are now stuck outside a hospital for an hour or more, with Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland facing similar pressure.
It's such a frustrating place to be in, and you almost feel powerless as a professional because you want to do your best for your patients and you're working in a system that's not letting you do that.
In England, it's now taking more than an hour on average to respond to someone with a stroke or possible heart attack. In some cases, it's much longer. 84-year-old Kula had to wait 14 hours for paramedics after breaking her hip in Cornwall.
It's not really a state that anybody should be left in for that length of time because you don't know what complications it could lead to.
But when paramedics tried to drop her at hospital, there was another wait, this time for 26 hours in the back of an ambulance before she could be admitted.
I cannot fault the ambulance crews, the paramedics, the nurses or doctors at all in any of this. This is a whole system failure. It's just really traumatic for her, and to see a family member like that, it's just horrid, absolutely horrible.
The government says there is extra funding to pay for more staff and free up hospital beds. A full emergency care plan is due in the new year. But with winter coming, along with strike action involving some nurses and ambulance services, hospital bosses are warning of difficult times ahead. Jim Reid, BBC News.
Well, our health editor Hugh Pym is here. Hugh, the Royal College of Emergency Medicine, it reckons disruption to emergency care is causing scores of unnecessary deaths.
Yes, Clive, the Royal College has said that they estimate that about a quarter of excess deaths each week, that is the number of deaths over and above what you'd expect for this time of year, are caused by delays for ambulances getting to patients and delays getting to A&E. Now, that is just their analysis. There are many, many causes for excess deaths, for example, conditions which weren't treated in the early stages of the pandemic, but that is their view. And certainly talking to paramedics who are out on the road, you really get a sense of their frustration and saying how upset they feel that they're often stuck in these hospital corridors, unable to hand over their patients to A&E because A&E is so busy, and they know there are people they need to get back to out there. Now, NHS England is saying it is a perfect storm right now. This is the management, senior management of the NHS in England, and hospitals are 95% full on the latest figures, very nearly full before we've even got into the real depths of winter. And they point again to the fact there are 13,000 beds occupied by patients in England who are medically fit to leave, but they can't because of these delays in community and social care. And they say flu cases are much higher than what you'd expect for this time of year. So a very difficult situation, and of course it's replicated in the NHS in all parts of the UK. Pressures on hospitals, GP services, ambulance services and social care.
Sure. OK. Hugh, thank you. Hugh Pym there. A charity boss who's black and was repeatedly asked where she came from at a Buckingham Palace reception says she felt abused by the encounter. Ngozi Fulani, who's British and the founder of Sister Space, which works to support abused women, likened the conversation with Lady Susan Hussey to an interrogation. Lady Susan, who's 83, is godmother to the Prince of Wales and has now resigned from the royal household. The palace described her remarks as unacceptable and deeply regrettable. Here's our royal correspondent, Sarah Campbell.
Ngozi Fulani, standing next to the Queen Consort with her back to the camera, was at Buckingham Palace in her role as a prominent campaigner helping women and families affected by domestic abuse. Minutes after arriving, she was approached by a palace aide, Lady Susan Hussey.
When the lady first approached me, one of the first things she did was to take my locks and move it out of the way. No conversation at first, and then she says, "I just want to see your name back."
Ms Fulani, a British national, then says she was repeatedly and aggressively questioned.
"I'm from here, I was born here." "Yeah, but where are you really from?" "I'm really from here." "Yeah, but okay, so I can see that this is going to be a bit of a challenge." She said, "What's your nationality?" And I said, "Lady, I was born here, I'm British." I was thinking that would be the end of it. No.
Lady Susan Hussey, here in the blue, who was a lady-in-waiting to Queen Elizabeth for 6 decades, stepped aside from her honorary role yesterday. A palace statement said the individual concerned expressed her profound apologies for what happened.
Are you clear in your mind that what happened was a racist incident?
I'm very clear, right? No matter how uncomfortable it is for other people to accept, I'm very clear that I experienced racism in an environment that I should have felt safe in, and we need to address that.
The row overshadowed the arrival in the United States of the Prince and Princess of Wales. The focus was supposed to be on environmental issues, but instead, before they landed, their spokesperson was compelled to make the royal couple's position clear that racism has no place in our society. Buckingham Palace said in a statement it had reached out to Ngozi Fulani. Today, she says she's still waiting for direct contact to be made.
Nobody's reached out to us directly from the palace. We would look forward to a conversation because this can't be, "I'm sorry," and move on.
Sarah Campbell reporting there. Well, our correspondent Neda Tawfiq is live in Boston, where the Prince and Princess of Wales are visiting. Neda, is there a real risk that this controversy could overshadow the royal trip?
Well, Clive, we've already seen as the Prince and Princess of Wales started this whole trip at Boston City Hall that it was already mentioned. We had a reverend and community activist telling the crowd that she would ask all of them to consider the legacy of colonialism and racism. So very much the risk here that this will add to the whole view that this trip is viewed in. For example, we are looking at William and Catherine coming to Boston in a time where the world, the United States, the monarchy has changed very much since their last trip in 2014. And as they look to cast themselves as the modern face of the monarchy, looking into the future, they will have to show just what kind of public servants they wish to be. Now, today they will be looking at here in Boston, a coastal city, some of the efforts being made to combat climate change. They'll be visiting one of the largest North America clean startup incubators here, but they also will be spending time, which was on the schedule, Clive, at a nonprofit called ROCA, which looks to work with high-risk youth. And I think many people will be looking at that and the sort of commitment that William and Catherine plan to make to these communities and what statements they can make here in the United States to show that they are really looking to the future.
OK, Neda, thank you for that. Neda Tawfik, they're live in Boston. A builder who described himself as a psychopath with a conscience has been found guilty of murdering 2 escorts 6 months apart. Mark Brown killed Leah Ware in May and Alexandra Morgan at a remote farm near St Leonards in East Sussex in November last year. He'd met them through a sex work website. Here's Duncan Kennedy.
Hello, mate, it's the police. Just go inside for us, yeah? Is it Mark?
When police arrested Mark Brown, they thought he'd killed one woman. It soon became clear that wasn't the case. They discovered he'd murdered not only Alex Morgan, but Leah Ware as well, 2 young mothers who died 6 months apart. Mark Brown, a labourer, had met Alex and Leah on an adult escort website. He brought both women to these isolated farm buildings near Hastings for sex. Mark Brown told the court that when he met Alex Morgan here at the farm, she slipped on a workshop floor, hit her head on the ground and died. He said he then panicked and didn't tell the authorities. When it came to Leah Ware, he said he had no idea where she went. On the day she died, security cameras caught Alex Morgan buying petrol en route to Mark Brown's farm. 28 minutes later, she's seen following Brown's car into the farm, where shortly after, he killed her. He later burned her body in this oil drum. When police searched his van, they found a prescription. It belonged to a second woman, Leah Ware. Leah had also gone as a sex worker to Mark Brown's farm and later formed a relationship with him. But in May last year, she too disappeared. Her body has never been found. To cover his tracks, police believe Brown drowned Leah's beloved dog, Lady, in this pond at the farm.
Mark Brown, he's an enigma, really. He's cold, he's heartless, he's ruthless, he's a narcissist. And I have no doubt if we had not have caught Mark Brown, he may well have gone on to do something similar.
This massive joint operation by both Kent and Sussex police did make extensive inquiries to see if there were more victims, but officers say there are none. Mark Brown, they say, was a calculating individual obsessed with violent pornography. Someone who left the families of Leah Ware and Alex Morgan devastated. 2 women who, between them, leave behind 5 young children. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
Citizens Advice says more and more people are falling further into debt, simply trying to cover the bare essentials, like food and energy. Researchers warn a growing number of pensioners and homeowners are seeking help, battling what they describe as a ticking time bomb of debt. Here's Hannah Miller.
David McGinley wants to give his children the best, but increasingly his family are struggling just to get by.
Are you borrowing to pay for basics like food?
Well, my wife's dad actually lent us money this week to get shopping for the kids. So, you know, we're not too bothered about us, but they didn't have sandwich stuff, you know, for school lunch stuff and teas this week. So Ashley's dad actually helped us out. But we're just desperate at times.
David looks after 2-year-old Jack while his wife is working full-time in a care home. He also has a part-time job in the corner shop.
So I've got £7.43 on the electric, which is roughly 2 days.
The family have a debt management plan to gradually pay back around £7,000 after falling behind on bills including energy and council tax.
Once you start falling behind, you know, luckily we've got family that can lend us money, help us out, but then we've got to pay them back. And then you're just forever chasing, you know, a never-ending, you know, debt. So it's like even now with Christmas coming up, we've had to borrow money off 2 or 3 family members. And we've not even gone out and started yet.
How do you feel about Christmas coming up?
Guilt. Feel guilty.
The charity Citizens Advice is warning more and more people have less than £0 left to spend at the end of the month. The average amount their debt clients have remaining after paying essential living costs is just 1 pence.
It's heartbreaking, really, especially like if you think about the clients that we've got coming in. Like a lot of them will be like single parents and they're really struggling to put food on the table and stuff like that.
Priority debts are things like rent and mortgage arrears, council tax arrears and energy arrears, and we're seeing substantial rises in all of them. So the people who are coming into us, they may not have as much debt as maybe in the past, but those debts are to the essentials that we all need to keep going.
And again, push, push. Good girl, well done. Clever, Poppy.
Linda relies on her assistant's dog Poppy for help around the house, but she's not entitled to extra cost of living payments because of the type of disability benefit she receives.
We're in a dilemma now of, do we leave the heating off and manage the bills, or do we turn the heating on and not pay the bills? So it's a bit of a dilemma. Do you run a debt up, or do you stay out of debt and stay cold?
Do you feel like it's inevitable that by the end of the winter you will be borrowing money to pay?
Yes. Yeah, I do feel it's inevitable. Can I have my purse, please, Poppy? Thank you.
And with more and more people struggling to find the cash to meet their basic needs, charities fear the rising cost of living will have long-term consequences and leave many more needing support.
Hannah Miller reporting there. The SNP's leader at Westminster, Ian Blackford, is to step down from the role. In a statement, he says he won't seek re-election at the party's general meeting next week because it's time for fresh leadership. Our chief political correspondent, Nick Eardley, is at Westminster. Nick, is this a surprise?
Well, Clive, Ian Blackford does have actually quite a public role in his job as Westminster leader. He gets those couple of questions at Prime Minister's Questions every week because the SNP is the third party. He's been doing the job for 5 years. But the truth is there has been a fair bit of speculation about his future for quite a few months now. Actually, there were some SNP MPs who weren't totally satisfied with his performance in the House of Commons. There were some who thought that the party just wasn't making enough of an impact at Westminster. And although Mr Blackford is broadly liked within his party, I think many of his colleagues had decided that it was time for a change as well. So Mr Blackford will stand down next week at the party's AGM in Parliament. Means that there'll be someone new in place for Prime Minister's Questions next week. Nobody has officially declared that they're going to stand yet, but I've spoken to quite a few people in the SNP in the past hour or so, and one name that keeps coming up is the Aberdeen MP Stephen Flynn. I think he's very likely to stand, very likely to win, although it's not impossible someone else tries to get the job as well.
OK. Cheers, Nick. It is 16 minutes past 1, our top story this lunchtime. Ambulance waiting times in England rise sharply amid warnings the NHS is being driven to breaking point.
Coming up on the BBC News Channel, Germany look to qualify for the last 16 at the World Cup later, but a moment of history in their match against Costa Rica.
Discarded batteries in household rubbish are causing hundreds of fires a year in bin lorries and waste facilities. Councils across the UK are warning that dead batteries should be disposed of properly at recycling centres and not in bins or the general recycling. Part of the problem are so-called hidden batteries in things like phones, electric toothbrushes, toys and even musical greeting cards. Here's our science correspondent, Victoria Gill.
The first smoke is subtle. But within minutes, this smouldering pile is a major fire. While no one was hurt, this Aberdeenshire recycling facility was destroyed. And the company says the most likely cause was a battery inside a discarded electrical device. We're using and disposing of more and more electrical items. And contained in many of those devices are lithium-ion batteries.
More and more of the people are putting these devices in their general rubbish, or they're mixing them with their normal recycling. And that causes a real problem for facilities like this, because they have a tendency, once damaged, to explode or ignite. And when you put them in your general rubbish or your recycling, they're likely to be crushed, compacted, smashed, or they might get wet, and that can cause them to become damaged or to short circuit. And then, of course, they're in the presence of lots of other flammable material like plastic and paper and card, and that can lead to quite big fires.
Many, particularly small electrical items, are making their way into these facilities, hidden in huge mixed piles of household rubbish. This CCTV footage shows the danger. When they're crushed, lithium-ion batteries can heat up and explode.
Many of us have numerous small electrical devices like these in our homes. So if you want to dispose of them safely, how do you do it? Well, there is a website where you can enter your postcode and find the nearest collection box that will take your device.
The best thing to do is to bring it to your recycling centre, and you can dispose of that safely with other small electrical items. But also supermarkets. A lot of supermarkets will have recycling points especially for batteries, so you can dispose of them there as well.
Waste campaigners and fire safety experts who've seen the dangers up close are calling for much clearer rules and government guidance on how to safely dispose of electrical devices. But the lesson here, they say, is never put electricals or batteries in your household rubbish. Victoria Gill, BBC News.
History will be made tonight as a female referee takes charge of a men's World Cup game for the very first time. Stéphanie Frappart from France will lead a team of 3 women as Germany seeks to avoid early elimination against Costa Rica. Our senior sports news correspondent Laura Scott has been speaking to her.
As the trailblazing Frenchwoman Stéphanie Frappart becomes the first woman to take charge of a men's World Cup match. Before the tournament, she told me that despite the enormity of the occasion, she feels ready for the opportunity.
The World Cup, Men's World Cup, is the most important competition in the world, not only in football. So we know that there is a lot of expectations. There was always pressure. There are always pressure in the matches, and also when you are a woman, you have more pressure because they are always new. I was always welcome in the stadium, so I feel like another referee inside the pitch.
The attention on Frappart's history-making moment will be amplified by how much is riding on the match she's officiating. Tonight's Group E clash between Costa Rica and Germany. But she's been given a clear vote of confidence by Germany's coach.
100% Vertrauen. I trust her 100%. I think she deserves to be here due to her performance and her achievements. We're looking forward to this performance. I hope she's looking forward to this match and us as a team. I think she'll perform very well. Sowohl wir als Mannschaft, aber sie auch mit ihrem Team.
Frappart won't be breaking down this barrier alone. She'll be accompanied by 2 female assistants, making it the first all-female on-field refereeing team. But how comfortable does she feel that this step forward comes at a tournament hosted by a country whose record on women's rights has come under intense scrutiny?
It's not me who decided this World Cup. When you are selected for the World Cup, how we can say that I'm not going? I was many times in Qatar. I was always welcome. I was no problem with Qatar. So we know that there is some difficulty there for the women, but I think and I hope this World Cup will help them.
For so long in refereeing, women were on the fringes. Now, on the biggest stage of them all, there'll be a woman in the middle. Laura Scott, BBC News.
England face Senegal on Sunday in their last 16 match, the first of the knockout stages. The manager, Gareth Southgate, has a lot to ponder as he considers his starting 11. Let's talk to Alex Howell, who's at England's training ground now. Alex, any suggestion about who might be in and who might be out?
Hi Clive, as you said, there's a lot to think about for Gareth Southgate going into that match against Senegal on Sunday. We've just come from training where all 25 players were out on the pitch. Only Ben White, who withdrew from the squad, has left, and he has a lot to decide about, doesn't he, the England manager, following the performances of Marcus Rashford and Phil Foden. Earlier today, West Ham midfielder Declan Rice spoke to us, and he told us why having so many options is such a strength for England going into this tournament.
You know, it's always nice to know that you can bring players off the bench that can instantly change the game. You know, whether that's, you know, we're drawing 0-0 and, you know, we need to freshen up front, or, you know, we need to change the legs in midfield, or even at the back. You know, we've got players that are world class that can come on and change the game instantly, and throughout a World Cup you're going to need that quality.
And coming into the knockout stages, the first real and serious talk about penalties. Declan Rice said the team are feeling confident. Manager Gareth Southgate will be hoping the side can get it done in 90 minutes and that the England team can start focusing on the quarter-finals.
Alex, thanks for that. Alex Howell there at the England training camp. For the first time since 2005, England's cricketers are playing a test match in Pakistan. Security concerns had prevented tours taking place for almost a generation of players. But England have been making up for lost time with a record-breaking display, finishing on 506 for 4, the most runs ever scored on the first day of a test. Here's Joe Wilson.
Rawalpindi, finally. A first England test match in Pakistan for 17 years began on time because England found 11 healthy players. That's Ben Duckett doing his thing. Batting with him, Zach Crawley. The virus in the England camp had relented, so spare your sympathy for Pakistan's bowlers. Welcome England reads the sign. Oh, they were delighted to be there.
Test match 100 for Zach Crawley.
Crawley to 100 from just 86 balls. On your feet in the dressing room, and why sit down? The runs, the records, the celebrations kept coming. Key factors, helpful conditions, England's bold ambition and some questionable fielding.
Pulled away and it gets to the fence, bit of a misfit.
Duckett made 107. Then it was Ollie Pope's chance. Another fluently forceful innings, another 100. Yeah, him too. Yet the most dismissive batting only came now. Harry Brook hit 1 over for 24 on his way to a century. 400 makers on the first day of a test match, 506 runs, astonishing records. England are back in Pakistan but playing as they've never done before. Joe Wilson, BBC News.
The former rugby league player Rob Burrow is to read the CBeebies bedtime story on the International Day of Persons with Disabilities this Saturday. The former Leeds Rhinos player lives with motor neurone disease and will be using an eye-controlled computer to read the story, which recreates the words in his own Yorkshire accent. Graham Satchell has that story.
Jackson! And now, guys.
Rob Burrow with his family at the CBeebies studio.
Who is it? You see someone?
I'm Shy. Hey, nice to meet you. Is your name Jackson?
CBeebies
bedtime story.
Hello, I'm Rob. I can't use my voice in the way that maybe you can, which is why I use this computer to talk for me. It's called an eye gaze. I use my eyes to gaze or look at the words and it speaks for me. It's like magic.
Watching at home in Sunderland, Lucy and her mum, Jo. Lucy has cerebral palsy and also uses a computer to help her communicate.
Where did you go?
In Bolton, this is beach class at Greenfold School. Many of the children here have learning difficulties and are non-verbal.
I used to play rugby as my job, but something happened that made my world go upside down. It made me feel topsy-turvy, but I was brave and didn't give up. From that day on, whenever Tilda's world fell...
Rob is reading a book called Tilda Tries Again. It tells the story of a happy little girl whose world unexpectedly turns upside down. Tilda sees a ladybird stuck on its back.
Then the Ladybird tried again, and again, and again, until at last it flew free. Till they thought about this, the Ladybird hadn't given up, so neither would she.
In Sunderland, Lucy used her device to tell us what she thought.
I feel happy like he's reading CBeebink's bedtime story.
Lucy's grown up watching the bedtime story, and never until now has she seen herself represented in that way. She's been so excited thinking that this was going to happen. I just think it's incredible.
Even though at times things felt a little topsy-turvy and she wanted to give up, she didn't. She just kept on trying.
Amazing story. Rob Burrows there ending that report from Graham Satchell. Time now for a look at the weather. Darren Betty's here. Hi there, Darren.
Hello there, Clive. Real mixture of weather once again across the UK. Some parts of the country are lucky enough to see some sunshine here across parts of southern England and also into West Wales. But other areas of southern England, well, it's been a struggle to lift that mist, fog and low cloud, and as a result, it's quite a bit colder. Some cloudy skies as you head further north across the UK into Scotland and also Northern Ireland. Here it's somewhat milder because we've got more of a southerly breeze, but across England and Wales there is no breeze at all to mix things up, and it's quite grey and gloomy and cold where we keep that mist and fog and low cloud, particularly in the Midlands. And because there's no breeze, we're going to find that fog thickening up again, particularly across East Wales, the West Midlands and the West Country. Further north, that low cloud across Northern England and Scotland, producing a bit of light rain or drizzle and sitting on the hills, keeping temperatures up here. But in England and Wales, with the cloud coming and going, fog coming and going, we're going to find those temperatures close to freezing. Tomorrow could see some brightness and some sunshine for a while across Northern Ireland. Still a lot of cloud for Scotland and also for Northern England, but further south the fog will lift more readily, that cloud pushing away, brighter skies and sunshine pushing into southern England, the Midlands, eastern England, where we could see 1 or 2 showers towards East Anglia and the southeast as the breeze begins to pick up. Temperatures around 7 to 9 Celsius once again. Now heading into the weekend, and there is a weather front on the scene, not really making much progress. Everything is getting blocked off by that high pressure that extends across from Scandinavia. And so we're going to find some areas of cloud on Saturday, some sunshine around, maybe a few light showers coming into some eastern areas and up towards the northwest of Scotland, perhaps Northern Ireland, thicker cloud, maybe producing a little light rain or drizzle. And those temperatures looking at around 7 or 8 degrees on Saturday, starting to get a little bit colder perhaps, and it will get colder still during the second half of the weekend. We've still got this run of easterly winds across us, and those easterly winds keep us in the colder air, and they're starting to strengthen just a little bit, and that will be more noticeable, I think, during Sunday. So again, some areas of cloud, some sunshine coming through, a few more showers, mainly across eastern Scotland and down some eastern parts of England. We'll have that easterly wind. It's not a strong easterly wind, but it will make the difference, and it will make it feel a little bit colder. So these are the temperatures we're looking at on Sunday, only around 6 or 7 degrees. But when you factor in that easterly wind, well, some eastern parts of the UK will feel more like 2 or 3 degrees. It is a quiet few days. Once again, most places are still going to be dry. We're going to find less fog, and that's because that easterly wind is going to be picking up, and that will make it feel colder, especially over the weekend. Back to you, Clive.
OK, Darren, thank you. Darren Bett there. And a reminder of our top story this lunchtime. New figures show ambulance waiting times in England are at their highest level, with 11,000 stuck for over an hour outside A&E last week. That's it. So, goodbye from me. Now on BBC One, let's join our news teams where you are. Have a very good afternoon.